Hi, folks. This is the Chapter 12 Vectors Unit, Chapter A, Page 1 walkthrough. I urge you, as always, to read this first and see if you can get through it. And if you need a little help, come back and look at these videos. This video is just going to be introducing the topic and talking about Page 1. If you actually go to the introduction of the unit, there's a quote from one of my favorite movies, where Vector Perkins introduces himself to Gru in Universal Studios' Despicable Me. He says, quote, "That's a mathematical term represented by an arrow composed of both direction and magnitude. Vector. That's me because I'm committing crimes with both direction and magnitude. Oh yeah." Sorry, I had to try. Anyway, this unit is built around a scenario, kind of like the graphing unit where we had the irrigation arm, or the non-right triangles unit where we had the planting beds at the Denison Mills Nursery. In this case, we have a request for your services again from one Tippy Hedren, the manager of the Xenops Bird Ranch in San Juan Capistrano, California. They've got what's basically a zoo for birds, and they're building a cage for the Yorkshire Canaries. And in this unit, you can see that there's this picture of the canary cage. And we're going to be using this as sort of a foundation for the unit. Now, vectors, in a nutshell, it's a way of representing more than one number in a single quantity. So if we want to capture the idea of direction, well, I don't know, direction and magnitude, direction and length, that's really what a vector is good for. And it comes in handy in lots of different situations. In this case, we're using it to represent things like the positions of corners, um, and in the bird cage, and the orientation and length of a pole that holds up the roof. So I've zoomed in on this picture so I can highlight a few things. This is a diagram of the Yorkshire Canary cage. It has a rectangular foundation, which is 16 feet in one direction and 18 feet in the other direction. The height of this foundation is 1 foot, but to be honest, the fact that it's a 1 foot thick foundation doesn't really have much bearing on what we're going to do. Now, this is very stylishly designed so that it's not just a simple box with birds in it. It's got a roof up here that's tipped from the horizontal. So whereas this floor that we're standing on here is flat horizontal, the roof is canted at an angle so that as you approach the cage from this direction, you have this very, very tall corner, and the wall facing you is very, very tall, and you have this great view of all the Yorkshire Canaries. And of course, because this is a bird cage, each of these walls is covered with a fine screen to keep the birds inside and to give you a maximum view of them. Now, in order to give the viewers at this zoo a great view of the birds, there's very little structure interfering with that view. In fact, the only thing that holds up the roof is the central pole that starts in the middle of the foundation and goes up to the roof. And it's tipped backwards. You can see that in the diagram. It's not vertical, it's tipped backwards towards this far corner. And as another sort of fact about this, the pole that holds up the roof is perpendicular to the roof itself, but it's not perpendicular to the floor. So some other things I want to point out about this roof are that we've named the corners of the roof A, B in the far corner, C over here on the right, and D in the front. And again, this distance here is 18 feet. This one is 16 feet. And in order to orient ourselves when talking about it, we have this idea that in this direction, we're going to say is east. This direction is to the north. So some of the description in here is going to be referring to those things. So let me zoom back out again. So I've talked about a lot of this already. The post rises out of the center, not perpendicular. As far as how exactly the pole is not vertical, how it's tipped, this line is extremely important here. I'm gonna try to, yeah. the the top of the post is directly over a point that is 2 feet north and 3 feet west of the center of the floor. So in other words, if you took a string with a weight on it and dropped it or lowered it from the very top of the pole, that would touch the floor at a position that is 2 feet north and 3 feet west of the center of the floor. So that's a way of defining how exactly that pole is tipped. The last thing I want to mention about this, if you have a chance to do this, at the bottom here, I have included a link to a Sketchup model. A Sketchup model, it's a 3D model that you may be able to open in your browser. There's a free SketchUp viewer that you have to run in a Chromebook in order to see this, and I believe it's available for you to install. I'm not 100% sure about that, but you can try it. Try that Chrome SketchUp viewer and take a look at the model. It's not absolutely essential, but you can, if you open that model, you can play around with the model, rotate it, and zoom in and out and get a good look at it. All right. So nothing else to do here, just talk about the scenario. Um, we're actually going to get away from the scenario for a while so we can do some sort of background work. And then we'll come back to it later at the end. I should say that the reason that the goal of this, as you're consulting with ZNAP's Bird Ranch, you are tasked with, in this situation, figuring out how high the corners of the cage are, because the roof is tipped back. It's not going to be the same everywhere, so that the person building the cage can construct the screened walls correctly. And because these corners are vertical, the shape of the roof is not actually rectangular. So again, the person building this roof needs to know at each of the corners of the roof what is the angle that's formed by the edges of the roof. And so it's not obvious what this is going to be. And with vectors and some more math, we're going to try to figure that out. So that's your job. All right, next video is going to be on page 2.